these lobsters are the only seafood that is kept alive in the grocery store. Transport and packing and just mishandling. I saw this lobster upside down and being eaten. In the wild, they can live up to 100 years old. Can you take a grocery store lobster and release it into the ocean? Hello and welcome back to the channel, everyone. I am super excited to be filming this video because it has been a minute. And not only that, I have had this video typed out in my notes, all the research done for a while now. I'm super ready to share with you all what I found because there's a lot of information. And unfortunately, a lot of it is sad. But I feel like I'm not alone. I feel like lobsters in grocery stores are super looked over. At least where I live in America on the East Coast. And if you don't know, a lot of lobsters are caught on the East Coast. So the grocery stores near me are always stocked. So never in my life have I really thought too much about it. Of course, I've walked by and been like, oh, that's super sad. But I don't even go over there that much in the grocery store because I myself am allergic to seafood. So I never purchase anything from there. I don't go over there. And I don't know, it's just so a part of the culture that I am around that it just doesn't really click in my head to think twice about it. Until now, because I saw this video on my recommended page on YouTube, which I'm sure all of you have seen by now. But when I saw that video, a million questions and thoughts just started flying through my head, and I raced to Google and started typing in every question, typing all the answers and all the research that I found into my notes on my phone. But here we are today. I have done the research, so I'm going to share it with all of you. I also did visit a few grocery stores and film the lobsters in them, and where I witnessed some very, very intense and very sad things. I will put warnings before I show those clips. However, let's get into what I found. So let's start off with the fact that these lobsters are the only seafood in most grocery stores, in most American grocery stores. They're the only animal that is kept alive in the grocery store, stockpiled into a tank and kept alive until someone buys them or they die. That in itself should raise some red flags. Now, aside from the lobsters, just taking a step back from that, the average cost for a lobster at a grocery store is around $20 a pound, and the average lobster at a grocery store is around 1.25 pounds, 1.5 pounds. Live lobsters and lobster meat in general is very expensive, not only for the consumer, but actually for the grocery store. It costs grocery stores a lot of money to actually maintain the tanks and keep these lobsters alive before purchase. And over the years, the actual purchasing of lobsters has decreased, so not many people are purchasing these live lobsters, which only leaves us to think that after being caught in the wild and brought to these grocery stores after a ton of transport and packing and just mishandling a lot of the time, they unfortunately die at the grocery store in that tank or are eaten alive by another lobster or something really vicious. And depending on the store, these lobsters are only able to stay alive for 1 to 3 weeks in the grocery store tank unless they die. Now, I've mentioned a few times already that their death could be very vicious and violent in these tanks. And a lot of you may think, well, how could that happen? Because they have those rubber bands on their claws. Now, it is a huge misconception that those rubber bands actually stop their pinchers. It doesn't. Unfortunately, in a lot of these grocery stores, the lobsters are starved. This does not speak for every grocery store. Obviously, I don't know about every single grocery store. However, through most of my research, I have found that they do not feed them. And if they do feed them, they are obviously feeding them inside the tank, which would then, if we know anything about aquariums, would affect the water conditions. So if they're being starved and if these rubber bands are not actually preventing their claws from working entirely, it ends up with a lot of lobster fights. What I'm about to show you is the reality of these lobsters being in these grocery stores, being starved, and really just for no reason other than someone to buy them fresh and take them home and cook them, which we'll get into in a second. But here's the footage from my grocery store. Again, if you would like to not watch this, I will put a time on the screen that you can skip to just because it is a little intense. Here you go. So right off the bat, I saw this lobster upside down and being eaten by several other lobsters. I honestly did not think I would see this in person, but I did. I looked around at the other lobsters. They seemed to be okay. These two back here were kind of like fighting. They seemed a little aggressive towards each other, which is, I guess, normal in this situation. And then I also saw this lobster who looked to be in distress and kind of trying to climb up the wall, maybe escape. Honestly, I wasn't expecting that what I had seen a ton in my research would actually happen in front of my eyes, filming like a 2-minute clip at my local grocery store. I was really honestly hoping for better. I was hoping that they were feeding them and that they weren't just tearing each other apart. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case, which brings me to the next part of the research, which is the fact that a lot of people think that lobsters can't feel pain. But in fact, scientists have done the research and they have confirmed that lobsters, that they can fear and feel the pain. So because of that, they do try to get away from it. But if they're in a tank, in a little enclosed tank, stockpiled on top of each other, there isn't anywhere to go. There isn't anywhere safe. There isn't anything to hide in. It's just lobsters and that's it. I've also mentioned now that these lobsters are all stockpiled into the tank and that alone is inhumane. So aside from water conditions, aside from hurting each other or it leading to death, and if they're being fed, them also going to the bathroom in this tank, in their natural environment, they're actually solitary animals, which means that they live alone. They do not live in groups. They don't live all near each other or anything like that. They live alone, which means that living in a tank with all these other lobsters is obviously going to cause their defense to come up and they're going to attack, and it's just going to be a nightmare. Now, lobsters don't have a nervous system. So what that means is basically us humans, if we go through something that's like extremely painful, we'll go into shock or like shut down so that we don't suffer. However, lobsters, since they don't have a nervous system, cannot do that, which means that they feel everything. And when you take them home and cook them and put them into the boiling water, they feel being burned for about a minute or until they die. Now, talking about lifespan of lobsters in the wild, they can live up to 100 years old. These things can get really old, really massive, but as soon as they're around 7 years old, they can be legally harvested. So cutting 93 years off of their life just for someone to enjoy on their plate sounds terrible. So not only do lobsters not have a nervous system where they can fear and feel pain, but they're also extremely intelligent. A lot of people think that lobsters are like stupid or they're just like walk around the tank or whatever they think. They're actually very similar in intelligence level as an octopus, which if you don't know how smart octopus are, they're escape artists. Like they're a very intelligent animal. And now going back to something I said earlier about their tank, we have to remember they're being kept at a grocery store. So although some grocery stores may have like test kits or something like that, if you think about it, most times the person maintaining the tank is not an aquarium professional. Saltwater can definitely be more difficult than freshwater. This isn't a betta fish in a 5-gallon tank. There are a ton of lobsters in a saltwater tank in a grocery store. This person's job is not necessarily to only maintain these lobsters in their tank. So the tank conditions can definitely get disgusting, definitely reach levels that are causing bacteria or these lobsters to become sick or die. I don't know if I have a picture of this, but they kind of just get placed vertically a lot of the time in these boxes, just kind of like vertically dropped into the box, all next to each other, almost like glass soda bottles in like a big case. So they make it to the grocery store and then they're just put into the tank. And that's it. Now to get into the question that everyone I'm sure is asking, can you take a grocery store lobster and release it into the ocean? Because thinking about all these things, I know for me, as soon as I started researching, I was like, I just want to go to the grocery store, get all the lobsters, bring them to the ocean, and let them live free. However, doing that has a lot of risk because they're solitary animals, they're territorial. You really can't guarantee where they came from, which means you don't know if wherever you would bring them is suitable for them to live for a bunch of different factors, including water parameters, temperature, things like that. And there just really isn't a way to guarantee that they will acclimate to that water in that environment well. There really isn't a definitive yes or no answer. It's kind of just like either way, once they've been caught, there are a lot of risks, a lot of factors, and a lot of harm that's being done to these lobsters. So on the brighter side, there are some stores that have stopped either selling lobsters or have created better conditions for them while in the tank. For example, Whole Foods, some locations have stopped selling them and some locations have created these kind of like PVC pipe, like little nests for each of them, which seems to have helped with some of the violence towards each other. And although it's not perfect, it is better than just throwing them into a tank and hoping that they will get sold before they kill each other. But that is a lot of information, and I never thought I would really research lobsters. I mean, who would have thought to research grocery store lobsters and what that really is and means? But it's kind of a lot of dark and sad information. I know for me, I was definitely surprised reading all of this stuff online. I'm hoping eventually grocery stores will stop selling live lobsters. I wonder how many times I said lobster in this video. If I can find any petitions, I will definitely link them down below, and if not, I will try to create one so we can start a petition to remove live lobsters from grocery stores because I think it's super important and really unnecessary. And other than that, let's keep loving the lobsters. I will see you guys in the next video. Make sure to hit that like button, comment down below, hit that subscribe button if you're new. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.